Alright, black powder shooter's box. I made a couple boxes out of some red oak. It's about ½ inch thick stock and used some box joints. And then I put a metal ammo can in the bottom of it. And here's the process of going through all that to make these Alright, went down to the Army surplus, and they have these ammo boxes. They're pretty good size. They're right at basically about the same size as my other one. 13 inches long, 7¼ inches wide, by about 10 inches deep. And I've got another plastic box. I tried to find a plastic I wanted them sealed, but after I got to looking at these still had the good rubber locks on them, and they're still in good shape where they'll latch up and make a strong box. Basically, I'm going to build a box that goes around these, and I'm going to use this oak, and it's going to be box jointed on the edges, and this box will basically sit down inside there, and should make a nice, cool looking shooter's box when we're done. I've got a hole in my pipe clamp jig board. Allows me to clamp my pieces down, and otherwise I could put them out here, but sometimes I would get in the way of the boards if they were pretty wide. So went down here, keeps it below level, and that works pretty good for keeping them parallel. You can see I've got quite a few boards I'm gluing up. I'm getting ready to make a couple ammo boxes, and I'm also making some I've got to plane those down, but those are the ammo box. I'm building a box jointed box that goes around them. Then I've got some that are down to 1/2 inch, which is what I'm wanting to get down to. Those will need to be planed, and we'll get them down to that point. So anyway, gluing up and getting them down there. I'm going to make 2 boxes. So this was resawed down from not quite 1-inch stock, and that was of course resawed on the bandsaw, and so it's got some roughness to it. But this is it's a box that I'm making for a Frontiersman group, so I want it to have some patina, as they call it. And of course this is all wood that came from logs that I had milled. So anyway, that's kind of the personality of it. I've got some lantern box kits that I'm need to glue up some 1/4 inch steel. So I'll probably get that done just so that it's not sitting there laying around on my machines a little bit. That's some little thinner stuff I'll probably glue together for some lantern box. So that's oak or tinder boxes. So yeah, you leave all that old stuff laying around, and it ends up taking up all the room in the shop. So I have a tendency to get projects and get them done, and go for that. So there we go, and that's kind of what I'm doing today. And there we go. Need to get rid of some spider webs. All right, first thing I start off with is a jig, and when I'm in V-carve, I take a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, and I generally start with a jig layout. What it is it's the size of my material, and I cut on the line, so it's going to be like a 1/16 inch bigger than the material. And then when I get this cut out, I double check all my material, which is this oak over here. I'm making a couple of rough shooter's boxes for our Frontiersman group, and I'm making it out of this oak that's been that I've resawed from logs. Some of this is really rough, and some of it's a little bit better. I'm making this for a gift for one of the boys, and anyway, his will get generally the better material, but I want the patina in this to be rough, and so a lot of it has different things in it. So it's not going to be a piece of fine work. It's going to be lugged around at a shooter's range. It's going to get black powder smudged on it. It's going to be probably set outside for a little bit. So I'm trying to make it tough, and I'm using a 1/2 inch oak, to make it out of. And I start off with my jig. I go into V-carve, and I basically just do one profile cut, put some fillets on the corners of it so that I can get it out. And then the block of wood that I'm cutting will fit right inside this. This is tacked down with 23 gauge pin nails, and if you don't have one of these tools, you're doing the CNC, this thing is handy. Any small parts work. You can put brads in there, 1/2 inch up to 1 3/8. So I mean, it's just an amazing tool, and it doesn't split the wood because they're pinned. And if the bit hits it, even if this bit hits one of them pins, it's non-consequential. It doesn't make any difference to it. It doesn't hurt it. Doesn't dull it. They're kind of a soft metal. Anyway, and then generally I have it go around here twice. This is a 1/4 inch, so the 1/8 inch will do it twice. And so what I did is I have it go through here and make the first cut, and then I'll pause it and just put a couple tacks in there just to keep it from moving around. And so that process works out pretty good for that. And so that's where I'm at with it. So I'm going to pry this up and size all my wood to fit in this jig, and then I'll put some supports for the sides of it up. All right, and of course I left a couple pins in here, and these pins sticking out, there's one right there, and you can either pull them out real easy with a pair of needle nose, or that way I pulled it right out of there. And like I said, they're small, and you know they're so small they'll vacuum up. But anyway, so that's my pins. My bit's getting a little bit dull, so it's kind of made a little fuzzies on the outside of it, but you know it'll be fine for right now. I might just run the sander over that just real quick to clean that up. But anyway, it's ready to go. So I'm going to measure that box and make sure my boards fit in it. And if they don't, then I'll resaw them, and or not resaw, but rip them and get them to where they fit in there. This is a fast cap reel. I bought it. I think the original was $80, or probably more money now because that was pre-COVID days. And anyway, it's got a handle on it, and it's a 25-foot pool hose. And I've had this thing like this going on 4 years. And yeah, I got it up against my furnace on the floor and burned a hole in it. And I've nicked it up a couple times, but you know, it still stays pretty good. And I can just grab that thing and rip it out real quick and put my ends on it. This hooks up to a lot of my machines. And I can real quickly vacuum this up, clean that all up. All the dust stays inside the box, and it's all ejected through the 4-inch dust collector there in the back through that back hose. And that comes over here, goes into the dust deputy, and drops 99% in that fiber barrel. And then this one over here is a DeWalt vacuum Quiet Tech, and it's amazing the difference in. I just turned that on. I had to keep a lanyard. It fits around my neck. It's got a piece of masking tape right there that will break. So if it gets caught in a piece of machinery, and I've worn this for like 4 or 5 years, and I've never had any deal, but I do want it to where it breaks away. But anyway, that's a shop vac, and that thing produces more suction than any of my other shop vacs I've ever had before. So it's literally amazing. Of course, the dust deputy keeps the filters clean, and the reel. This combination is a win-win-win for your shop. And you know, when you're done, you just walk over there and quickly reel it back in and get it out of your way. So let me go ahead and clean the dust out of that one and get it ready for put boards in there. All right, so when I make my jigs, I got to catch myself because this will be the corner of my material, and so that's my 0, 0, 0, 0 there. Was on this jig here, this is my 0, 0, 0. So I always got to remember that, because if I don't remember it, first thing I do is I cut this first one off, and I go, ah. So anyway, that's that. I will tell you, whenever you're making a CNC machine, put some trays, figure it a lot wider. So if you do want to put a dust box on it, I would not run this machine without this dust box. I don't like having my shop all filled with dust. I don't like having my lungs filled with dust. I've got that up there, and that's a filter that comes out of that's a $20 Lowe's fan. It slides out of there. I can take them out both out of there in just a second. There's nothing that keeps them in there other than they're in a slide deal. And that filter needs to be cleaned. And I clean it probably once every couple months or so. Looks like my LED light over there is in strobe mode. I don't know why. I was wondering how long those would last. I got them from Lowe's. But anyway, I'm getting ready to do this. I'm going to take a square and mark my Z, or my X and Y over here in the corner. And of course it's calibrated for my Z off of that material that was there. And what I'm going to be putting on there, I'll recalibrate it here in a second. So let me get that done. All right, little magnetic square is handy. Talk about a quick reference. Shoot that thing's off 2 degrees from 90, and I'm doing construction work. I'll get a little ahead of myself. And anyway, so that little square is just handy for dialing things in. And then of course I lock it down with my table saw, my height. So this is a little magnetic square. I think I ordered it online, or I got it from Grizzly. Anyway, really handy. It always sits on my table saw right there. Picked that trick up from Izzy Swan, which I learned a lot from him, and I appreciate all the good stuff he teaches. I'm still working off of this old Delta saw, and it works. But you know, hey, what can I say? I built a table and put an 8-inch a helical type, or it's a spiral cutter head where the blades are scattered through it. It does pretty good. Then I put my router box out here on the side. It has this port just big enough. Of course, it lifts out. So, you know, if you want to make any adjustments. I'm not too keen on the screw up deals, because you don't really have access to change your bits and stuff with that as easy as this. And you can lift that out, and it works really good. Of course, I have the finger holes and stuff. So that's a 40-year-old thing I picked up when I was a kid, and it's a great tool saver. All right, next thing I'm gonna do is mill down all my wood. Check the first one, make sure it will fit inside the box, and we'll get over to that oak over there and mill it down. All right, I just slid that 4-inch hose out of the back end of my CNC machine. And then I brought my extension cord over. Everything in my shop is on wheels. As you can see, I'm tight on space. And, you know, I could easily pipe in dust collection all the way, but as I'm getting older, I realize I need more exercise. So every time I pick that up and move it and roll it back up and pull this out and get down there and stoop down there, that's exercise, and I need that. So 65, I'm starting to get a little stiff when I get up and down, so that'll keep me rolling. All right, they're set up. We're going to see how close we are dialed in. We'll cut one and then check it in the jig. Okay, so there's my jig. All I did is cut some 1/4-inch strips, use them as a spacer board to bring it up to the top of my piece, so I can use some leverage to hold down my pieces. And they also wedge, and they're down. They're just a little bit too tight. I can loosen this up just a hair, swivel it, and then tighten it down with the screw gun. So with the drill gun. So anyway, I think we're about there. I think I will loosen this one up and pivot a little bit, and that'll overlap that, and away we'll go. Went around this thing and just loosened them up a little bit, cranked them in a little bit more so that they're sitting over the top of that thing. And now let's run our box joint on that and see how she looks. All right, got that one out. As you can see, I got kind of a funky glue job on that, but you know, hey, that was the worst piece. Now, since I've got it jigged up, it's back in there. There's no shims that are needed. It just fits in the jig, and my overlays are holding it in, and there we go. We're ready to run it again. All right, last night I put the glue to this box, and of course you never have enough clamps. Anyway, I'm ready to strip those off of there and to glue up the other box. And it showed, I showed, you know, CNCing from the CNC setup. This worked out real well. I had basically 12 pieces of wood that were all the same sizes. And, you know, what I did is I just cut the 1/4-inch template. And, of course, it's mounted on top of a waste board. And then these are my jig boards here at the bottom. And so I can put screws into anything and make my jigs whatever they want to. And then when I get this piece cut up, then I can just pull the 1/4-inch and most of the time I don't have to even flatten it, but sometimes I will flatten it if it ever gets bad. I use regular glue when I'm gluing this up. I tried contact cement and they pulled apart, so use regular glue. Anyway, the brass washers keep the pressure down, and this is basically cut to where it just fits in there, and all these 12 boards just fit in there. First one I had put a couple of shims because it was a little bit less than the rest of them. But anyway, the brass, if your bits get into the brass, it will cut the brass and not tear up your bit. And so that works out good. And then these also keep the pressure down. And, you know, of course, you got your cam. These are an offset cam. And so what they do is they basically move out and cover the top of it. And then whenever you get ready to take it out, you just slide it in. And you can adjust the downward pressure with a drill bit. Anyway, that jig worked out real well. And generally what I'll do is I'll just write on here the date I used it, what it's for, and you know, reuse it. I generally will pull the cams off and the screws, but the rest of it will stay on there. Sometimes I'll glue these on there and they'll stay in there, or sometimes I just pull them off. So it's kind of where that, a lot of times if it's a one-time use thing, then I'll repurpose the plywood. And I have a bunch of jigs back in the back corner that I've made. Here is the scraps from my cutouts. Got to make a bunch of 3/8 dowels, and so I'm going to cut this in this material down and put it in there. It's kind of funny. This project's taking me a while because of vacations and ranger events, so I lost track of the thickness of my material. So I milled it all at 1/2 inch and forgot to plane it down before I run it in as a box joint. And then after I had all my box joints made, I ran it through the planer. And fortunately, it had no tear out, no rip out. And so, you know, they came out fine. And of course, this is for a Frontiersman group. So I left the patina of the rough wood in there because I wanted to simulate, you know, when the days of old, they weren't real, I mean, they had to make stuff out of what they had. And so this wood was cut and resawed from logs that I had harvested from various places. Anyway, those are the ammo cans, and I'm getting ready to glue this box up, and let's get started. Alright, move that over to the pump up table, and I want to tell you this much. If you don't have a pump up table, you need to get one, because you can pump that up and get it up to the right height, so you're not either stooping or whatever your work is. You can, you know, get this thing up to this high, or you can get it down lower, and you can get as low as that one over there, or it can get up pretty high. So whatever the project that you're working on, you can do that. And so I'm getting ready to strip the clamps off of here and get her done. And I made a mistake of putting my glue on this one right here down, and it looked like it dripped down there on the floor. So anyway, I had gotten this type bond because it says it's translucent wood glue, and the verdict's not out on it yet whether or not I will continue to use it. But you know, whenever you're dealing with oak and you're doing this inside deals with that, you don't see all the glue that's run down and dripping. So I mean, it's handy for that. So whenever I'm gluing up something inside, then I'll do that. Now, this hasn't been sanded, and I probably will leave these unfinished, just because I want it to be a rough look. Anyway, when I get it undone, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Alright, that's the box that's finished. And again, this will get that green ammo box put inside it, and it will be cut down about right here, and then the green ammo box sit on there. It'll have probably a hinge, most likely in the same direction as that is here, so I'll probably put a hinge on this end right over here so that it lifts up, and it'll be a hasp here, and I'll cut that down probably about right there on that corner of that box joint, all the way around it. Anyway, nice looking oak box, and I've got another one to glue up. Remember, I'm doing glue ups. I always keep a wet rag, and then this is rag and just gentle squeeze, so there's a lot of moisture still in there, and just wetting everything down. Yeah, it raises grain, but who cares? I'm gonna sand it anyway. Anyway, it makes for cleaning up of that stuff really good. So let me get this next box out here, put the glue to it, and we'll start clamping it. And of course, the beautiful thing about box joints is you can dry fit them and put them together. Now, I put allowance in my box joint creator, and I put a .01, and so I don't have to fight it. I don't have to beat on it. I don't have to do it. The pieces just slip in, and there's room in there for glue. And what I'll do is I generally will take the pieces and lay them out and unfold it, and they go out, and then I'll lay it out for the glue. So I just do a dry fit. Okay, when I do my box joints, this is how I glue them up. I just take a dab of glue and I put it on all of the points all the way around. All the seams, I just run them over the seams as they are. And then I hit all of all of the tongues, and that gives me the glue to get it. Put all my faces that go in up, so that when they just turn in, and that gives me the good faces on the outside. And there's always stuff that you're hiding on the inside. Maybe the one side's a little bit worse than the other side, but this way you also check your grain direction, make sure you don't have them turned around wrong. Anyway, this is that. So let's get a piece of glue around here, and we'll come right back to you. A couple little tips. I have two pairs of pliers on my little workbench here, and they fit down in a couple little grooves, like right in here. But I keep my pliers because glue's always drying up around there. Sometimes you need two sets of pliers to climb it up. These little bitty pliers work real well, and I'll clean out the tips of that as they dry up, and so that's a handy device to have. All right, got glued around all the edges. Now I'll just assemble it. Got all my clamps laid out here on the ground, and I'll put them on. Generally, I put these on first and get them going. I'll wipe it down just a little bit, and then I'll go around and put the other stuff on it. So let's get started with that. Now, depending on your glue, this has a tendency to run pretty fast. What I'll do is I'll put a couple of clamps on the sides just to hold the box together, and then I'll wipe out the inside and the outside just a little bit. So let me get that done, and there's that still glued right there. So let me wipe that out, put a couple clamps on it. Okay, I've given that a little wipe down, and again, this is the kind of glue that you can't really see it, and you see my pieces still have glue on there, so at the top there's still a little bit of glue, and we're going to go ahead and hit that real quick and put that on there and start clamping it up. All right, need to have plenty of clamps and go around it, tighten every piece up. The last couple of clamps you'll hear it go pop, 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 and as it brings everything in and into the setup. If I had a couple more clamps, I'd put them across here, and I do have a couple of bar clamps, but I think she's probably drawn up pretty close, pretty tight, and you can always add more clamps. I don't know if you could ever have enough clamps to put on everything. So, but anyway, she's clamped up, ready to go, and I'll let that cure up. Clamps on it probably 4 or 5 hours, and then we'll be ready to go. We'll have another box just like this one, and now I need to figure out what I'm going to put on here for a hinge setup, exactly where I want them to be at. And I may make some wooden hinges for it, which would be kind of fun, but I'm not sure just yet. We may just put some brass hinges on it. There you go. It's coming together good, and it's a lot of fun. I've been working on this for a month just because I've had all kinds of ranger activities. I started these right after a national rendezvous, FCF style, Frontiersman style rendezvous, and one of the boys had brought his shotgun stuff, or not shotgun stuff, but his black shooter stuff in a cardboard box, and he's one of our territorial scouts, and fine young man. Anyway, so I said, hey, I'll make you a box. I actually tried to go buy one, and they'd actually sold the one that I was going to go buy just a few minutes before I bought it. So this way he's going to get one really cool box. And I'm putting it inside with the ammo deal, so if it's pouring down rain, it sets out, all this contents stay dry. He can choose whether or not to use that metal box or use this box, or just take that one and leave this one, you know, at home. It doesn't matter, but this will give it a lighter weight shell. I did go down to 3/8 of an inch, and you know, I was worried about weight because you are lugging these things around. So I was just, you know, was wondering how heavy I was going to make all this stuff. So, and these ammo kits are got from the surplus store here in town. Harbor Freight sells, you know, something that they've manufactured. It's a little lighter duty, and you know, probably in hindsight, I would have been better off to get the Harbor Freight. It's a little bit lighter than that, and you know, and I can always reorder those. So this one here, that size may not be available next time I go to making these. So that's the advantage of generally going with something that's manufactured that you can get to. Anyway, so there we go. We're ready to go. And it's 5 in the morning. I've been up for an hour and a half. And I've been watching YouTube videos and just having fun. And, you know, there we go. And, you know, with the CNC machine, everybody thinks, well, once you do the CNC machine, you don't need your extra tools. Oh, I got news for you. The CNC machine only requires you to use the extra tools to get it there. On this job here, to get these done, you know, it takes the whole shop to get you there. And time you plane stuff and you resaw it, you rip it on your table saw, you joint the edges, you sand some of the pieces that you're needing to make it with, and the panels that you make it with. And then, you know, some of the jigs that you need, you'll rip them again on some of these other tools. Sometimes I'll put that drill press to extended use, the planer, and the extraction deal. This is almost a little bit too big for the deal, but this has its own impeller, so it don't need shop vac. The guys that are shooting these into their shop vac, they're just wasting their time and their resources, because this one right here will fill that up. And the only problem with trying to get these to seal, and of course this is on wheels, and when it gets heavy, then I go dump it, and it's just a regular dumpster with the pipe comes out with T's, and it comes out, and then this is just a little filter bag. And you know, it flat gets with it. It's not a you know, if I really wanted to and was smart about it, I'd just put a cyclone on it, get a 4-inch or a dust deputy, a 2-inch dust deputy, and mount it on top of a barrel. But I use this sometimes for a clamp or a table, put stuff on. So I was thinking about making a clamping table to fit on this thing, so I could get really double purpose out. Right now it's kind of a catch-all for my wet rags and that thing. So anyhow, it's all coming together pretty good. And as you know, the clamp rack holding thing, these Lowe's deals make excellent clamp racks. I keep all these clamps come off of this, and you know, you don't have to make a custom deal. It's just part of your storage, and just making it where it fits in. These handles fit right in between the grooves, and they slide in between these little V truss things there that go across there. And yeah, you lose a little pulling out, you know, deal on that, but hey, you know, if I need to and pull them out just as quick as I want, and you know, they just come right straight out, and they're easy to put back in. So slide back in there. So that's a pretty good clamping rack. And you know, of course you can't have enough clamps. When I was putting together these panels, you know, of course I used every one of my bar clamps, and I like the pipe clamps. I'm probably going to get a few more of them. I like the ones with the feet on them, like those red ones up there. The kind that don't have the feet, they just kind of sit up there, but I like the ones that have the feet because they lock in on my rack. And you know, that little rack is just simple. All it is just a square box with one lip up, and you know, that's your clamp rack. And you know, it's basically just a mini truss with a little piece of plywood in between it. Works out good. There's my pipe clamps for keeping the jig, keeping my pipe clamps parallel for that. So takes the whole shop to get it done. There's some of my oak that was left over, and we've got a bunch of oak down in the shed that's drying. I've got a sticker down there, and I repurposed a lot of wood that comes from, that's from a 40-year-old table that I had in my shop when I was 26 years old, and they had an old piece of particle board on it. So I took all the pieces together, and I already used some of that material on a different project. And again, I think I mentioned about repurposing these to make some dowels for the lanterns. I'll cut these square and then run them through my dowel jig that cuts jigs, that cuts the dowels. So I'll repurpose most of that and the waste out of it, and get some more dowels, because I'll need some for some lanterns here one of these days. Anyway, working good. And I'm flapping my jaw. So let's get her done. All right, set her up on the table saw, and now I have a box. Let's cut for the top. Got room to pull this thing out, and if you want to, you don't want to snap this thing, you can leave the hinge open, and it will still hinge open and not be bothered by the box if you leave it in the box. Otherwise, it's totally free to be used in a box, and it sits out like that. And that box over there will set out like that and come down flush with the outside edge. I've got to put some little keepers inside here that will seal up along the lid in here on the box, and I'll probably put that on the lid so that when it's just a little piece of 1/4 inch or something go around there, I have enough room to come all the way around that box and do something with it. We've got a lot of room here. So there we are there. Now it'll be flat. So just need to make a retainer clip that goes around here that will keep this sealed up and keep the water from any water coming in. I guess the best thing would be to put it in here so water flows down. Anyway, we got another one just like it over here with a box in there, and let's get busy. All right, I'm putting this door gap. It's about sticking about a 1/2 inch so that it'll keep the lid lining up on it perfectly good. I just did a round over bit on this one edge here and this one edge here. This one here will actually start getting bent off, and I can get it just a little bit with the sander. Anyway, so that was 1/4 inch oak. That was some really trashy oak that I had, the scraps that I had planed down and saved, so I put it back to work. And then I cut all these individual pieces. Then I cut them 1 inch shorter, so I got a 1/2 inch gap on each corner, and that way it'll stay just beautiful. And let that dry. I've got some 30-minute DAP on there, and then some regular wood glue. So between the two of them and 3 or 4 pin nails, just nice. I'll tell you what, that thing is beautiful. That pin nail machine is beautiful for putting that stuff in. No splits. Just, you can't even see it. There's like 10, 12 pin nails in that, and you can't see any of them. So really good. Even if you went through the outside of it and came through this outside, you can sand them and still not see them. So, it keeps stuff from moving around while you clamp it, and it's pretty good stuff. Well, I had the need for something to hold this thing out, and I was thinking of a jig that I could put up here and real quick and So I'm going to use that vacuum jig and put it together. And I looked over at my vacuum pump, and it was laying on the ground over there. I had a glue joint on my shelf give up. It ripped my electrical outlet in half. So I took that apart, rebuilt it, put in the regular wood glue on it, put a angle bracket in it, put screws into it, and then redid the electrical outlet and put a new one up. And she's back and running. So that thing's over here running. This is held under by vacuum, as you can see. And I put this under about 1.5 years ago, and I haven't touched it. It was a little bit dried out. This is the same thing, except this don't have the little rubbers in it. Those actually stayed in it. But let me turn this thing off. Turn this thing right here. Turn that off. That's going to lose suction and fall off there in a minute. Let's see how long it stays there without having suction on it. There she goes. Anyway, I had to shoot a little WD-40 on there to loosen that up, because it's been 1 year, 2 years, probably since I used it. The vacuums are kind of problematic, and so I just got to where I was just like, yeah, shoot, if I can, I'll just clamp a board up to that. So I was using the edge of that for doing that one. Could have done the same thing this way and done the same thing, and I actually do that faster than using the vacuum jigs. But anyway, I put it to use today, and it worked out, and fixed a thing or two that was broken, and we're good to go now. Box is coming along. I'm putting the hinges on there. Here's the other box of the hinge. I'm going to put the hasp on there yet. There's my 2 hinges on the back side. And so there we go. We're getting closer and closer, and I'm going to have to put the hasp on there. All right. There they are completed. I went around and stabilized all the knots. Used some DAP 30-minute glue with a little bit of the accelerator 2P10 on it. All the hardware's been on it, mounted. It's ready to take it off and sand. And I'll basically sand it up, get it ready to go. Sand knots off a little bit, and just make sure they're good. It came out pretty good, I think. All right, so there they are. After I got them glued up, I went around and stabilized got all the hardware on there, and stabilized all the joints and all the knots. I had a couple little screws a little bit. I just put a little bit of dab of glue on the top of them just to keep the pointies from getting on you. Then I went around and hit all the knots. This one had more knots in it than the other one does, but or vice versa. Anyway, I went around and stabilized all that, and should be pretty good to go. It reminds me of an old shoebox. If I just had the foot hold up here, it would be a great shoebox. Anyway, that's all oak, and there's 2 of them. Those little guys there fit right inside them, and there we go. Let's see what we get.